So we were constantly butting heads about, well, what's wrong? Why are you so sad? What's the problem? You left him, so why are you so sad? So it was just a horrible year. This particular night, I had decided that I had had enough. It was probably around 10 o'clock at night, and I decided I was just gonna go outside and just walk. It was snowing, and I really don't know where I thought I was going, but I just took off walking. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that it was very cold and very snowy, and I wasn't gonna get but so far. But I landed at this little restaurant near my mom's house. And as I mentioned, it was late, so I went to open the door and it was locked. And I peeked in, and there were some people at the bar. The bartender was there, and I kind of tapped on the door, but of course he was like, we're closed, I don't know who you are. And I remember I sat down, there was a little bench outside, and I sat down on that bench in the snow, and I just cried. After a few minutes, the bartender came out, and he asked me, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I remember thinking, how do I even answer that? Well, where do I start? Do I start with, I wanted to end my life? Do I start with my abusive marriage I had just left? What do I say? And I just looked at him and I said, I give up. I give up. And I will never forget, this stranger came up to me and he said, ma'am, I don't know you, but I want to tell you this. I love you. And I know someone else loves you, and you matter. And he said, what I'm going to do is call you a cab. Do you have a place to go? And I told him I did. He said, I'm going to call you a cab. When the cab gets here, tell them where you need to go, and we got you covered. Now, I still had a long journey ahead of me of healing and processing everything that was going on. But in that moment, I realized the power of words. See, this man's words healed me. He was a complete stranger, but it started the path of my personal story and my personal recovery. And it actually, all these years later, that experience was one of the things that started me on the work that I do and helped create my mission to honor, empower, and refresh. See, words are powerful, as we all know. Words can heal. And as I mentioned, that experience all these years later not only helped me, but every time I have told this story, it blesses someone else. It reminds someone else to just speak powerful words. Now, I've shared that story, but I want to ask you all by a show of hands, how many here have ever been depressed? How many here have ever stayed up late crying, worrying, stressing? How many here have ever felt like my back is against the wall? Keep your hand up. All right? Now I want y'all to look around, because these are not just experiences that you've had. These are books. Okay? Each one of these situations, these traumas, these tribulations that you have gone through is a book, is a story. It's something that's going to change someone else's life. Because you went through it, you are the expert of that particular accomplishment. Now I want to share another story with you all. It was 2019, and we're just gonna keep rolling because the slides. It was 2019, and my husband and I were staying with my grandmother. We were caregivers for my grandmother. At the time, she was 96 years old. And we were actually about to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary and go out of the country. And she fell. So we had to get all that taken care of. She had to go get procedures done and all that. She went into a rehab place. When we got back from our trip, we were trying to figure out exactly, you can go back. We were trying to figure out exactly how were we going to take care of this situation. See, they had told my 96-year-old grandmother that she would most likely never walk again. She had to go through physical therapy, and at 96, they weren't very optimistic. But see, they didn't know my grandmother. At 96 years old, this is the woman who was told she would not walk again. And see, what I realized, yes. Let's clap that up. And May 1st of this year, she turned 99 and is still alive and well. Yes. Here's the thing. As I was watching her do physical therapy, and I was watching her, sometimes her little arms were trembling as she was putting the work in, I realized something about my grandmother. I realized how powerful she is, how much strength she had, how much courage, resilience. And then I realized that this was something that she had passed on to my mom, to my aunt, to the women in our family. And as I watched her and I thought about her story, and I thought about my mom's story and my aunt's story, I realized that I needed to write about it. I needed for at least the people in my family to recognize the power that we had, the legacy that was left for us. And so I began to write about their stories. And that was really my first book, Celebrating a Legacy of Courage and Resolve. And here's the thing. I had heard many of these stories growing up, the different things that my mom went through, my aunt went through. My aunt was a victim of domestic violence. She had her first child at 14. You know, I'd heard these stories growing up, but to be an adult and to talk with them and sit down with them and interview them for this book, it was life-changing. To hear my aunt talk about being 18 years old and her boyfriend holding a gun to her head and how she survived that. To hear my grandmother talk about going through the Great Depression and talk about not going to the back of the bus. She swears she was before Rosa Parks. But to hear them share these stories was powerful as an adult. As a child, I remember around 8 years old, the police came to our house and arrested my mom. And the reason why, she was a single parent of me and my sister. She didn't know what she was going to do. And she decided that she was going to take 2 forms of government assistance illegally. She committed fraud. She was just doing what she felt she had to do. But as we know with the government, they don't play about their coins, to piggyback after Stacey. They don't play about their coins. So they came to the house and arrested my mom in front of her kids. Now, as a child going through that, I really didn't understand the gravity of that. But as an adult, to sit down and talk with her and have her share with me that she had to make a decision. Do I call my mother to bail me out, or do I call someone to make sure my kids will be okay? Those are the kind of decisions that she had to make that I got to write about. And here's the thing. This book was amazing. It honored them. My aunt, who's now deceased, but at the time, she was still volunteering, doing work in a hospital. She felt like a celebrity. She would go to work, take her books, get them signed like she was, a celebrity. They felt like their lives had mattered. And that's one thing that I really want to share today. See, when my aunt was raising a child at 14, when she was afraid for her life from a boyfriend, she didn't know that that would be a story. She didn't know that that would empower other women who were leaving abusive relationships. When my mom was being arrested, she had no idea that that situation would later be in a book that would encourage mothers and women to do the right thing, to avoid certain consequences. My grandmother certainly didn't know that going through the Great Depression and all these other things would later encourage women to think about their heritage, their legacy. And that's the power of your story. Though all of us raised our hand, we went through depression or sleepless nights or anxiety, you don't know how powerful that story will be, how it will influence someone else until you write about it. When you write about it, when it becomes a book, that's when you can change the game, right? And as I mentioned, this book not only blessed my family, but I was amazed at the feedback. This book changed the lives of other women. This book encouraged people to sit down and talk to the people in their family, right? To get away sometimes from all the social media and all the other stuff we get wrapped up in and actually have conversation. This book brought families together, and it forced people to think about, well, what legacy do I have in my family? Again, that's the power of a book. Now, as we talk about the powerful healing ability of a book and how it can help someone else, how words can help someone else, there's another benefit of writing. Now, if there are any mathematicians in the room, this is not for you. Or if you're just really good, because I am not, but we can actually flip a couple. I want this question here, within a matter of 5-6 seconds, who would be able to, without writing it down, solve this math problem? 378 divided by 27. Right, okay, so good, I'm not alone. In a matter of just a few seconds, most likely in your head, you would not be able to figure this math problem out. Now, if I gave you a pen and a paper, within a few seconds, you're gonna figure it out. What makes the difference? It's the same problem, it's the same brain doing the figuring. Why is it different when you write it out? Who thinks they know the answer? Go ahead. Oh, I mean the answer to why is different. Why do you think it's different when we write it out versus trying to do it in our head? There it is. There it is. Right? And it's been scientifically shown that when you try to figure something out in your head, it's a different type of processing than when you actually engage your other senses, and especially your hands, your sense of touch. It actually helps the processing go better, which is why journals have become so popular, which is why there's so much encouragement about writing. So as we think about that, as I wrote this book, it was doing great, my first book, I was going through my own transition. As I mentioned, I was newly married, and things I thought I had gotten over from the abusive marriage were starting to pop up. We were caregivers for my grandmother, and as much as I love Granny, that's a very challenging responsibility, right? So I was dealing with things, and I was noticing that I was starting to slip back into some old ways of thinking. What would I do? Well, the first thing, I went to therapy. I very much encourage that. But then I started writing it down. See, I knew the tools, but I needed to write them down so that I could start to put them in place for myself. And as I began to go to therapy, as I began to write down my own steps of what I needed to do, things began to change for me. And that's when my second book, I Can Fix Mine, was born. Now, this book really changed the game. This book allowed for so many people to have healing. See, this book reminded women that you have the power. See, as women, so many times we either want somebody to fix us, or we're busy showing up for everybody else and fixing everybody else. But how many times do we stop and think, you know what, I need to fix myself. I gotta fix my own crown. I'm helping everybody else, but I'm still broken, or I'm still dealing with challenges. This book was the answer for that. And not only did it have in there areas for you to write down and do the work, for you to put your own affirmations, but this book opened up and allowed for me to start back up my coaching, for me to start back up speaking, workshops. This book, once again, the power of writing, the power of your story, the power of turning drama and trauma and situations into your story, into a book. This changed the game. So we've talked about how words and stories can heal other people. We've talked about how it can heal you, but can it create leverage? Is it just that? Is it just helping people, doing good in the world? Can it actually create leverage for further business and opportunities? Now this next slide, for those that know me and have worked with me know, I've done different side hustles, side games. Stacy knows, side business. So I have a box business and other little side hustles. In the year of 2020, my side gigs brought this amount in for the year. Now, y'all, I felt good about that. I had a regular job, so I'm like, hey, little extra change. But the following year, because of being an author, because of writing my book, and I know Dr. Oliver T. Reed always talks about your book is your business card. Let me show you what happened the next year. Over $8,000. Yes. And this was simply because I used my book as leverage. My book became my business card. My book became the thing that showed people, here's something physical and tangible that you can use that shows that I'm an expert on these items. And this year, we're slated to do much more than this.
Let's go.
All right? So that's what thank you. That's what I really want to encourage you all. As you listen to the different speakers today, I know everybody's going to be amazing. I know Dr. Oliver T. Reed is going to kill it and get everybody excited. I want you to remember this. Remember that your story is powerful, that your story will touch people beyond what you could ever even imagine, but it can also create business and opportunities for you. Now, there's one more story that I want to share with you all. As I mentioned, I've gone through divorce, domestic violence, depression, a lot of different things, and I figured I had really been through just about everything. But in a little over a year ago, my husband and I experienced a miscarriage. And that probably topped every single thing else that I had been through. That was very traumatic. And being a person that empowers other people and uses my voice, I knew I had to speak on it. I had to give other women permission, but I couldn't do it until recently. And I shared with Dr. Oliver Reed that today I would reveal my 5th book.
Let's go.
All right? So I am happy to announce my next book, My Loss, My Way, Your Guide to Healing After Perinatal Loss. Listen, this journey has been so many different emotions. As a person who believes in therapy and goes to therapy, I was told things that were unimaginable as far as dealing with this loss. I was told, well, just go to a nursery and hold other babies. Why would I? That doesn't make sense, but everybody means well, right? So this book, I am simply giddy about how it's going to change other people's lives, right? It is going to give other women permission to grieve their way, right? It is also going to provide resources for those who actually want to help, family, friends, who don't know what to say, don't know how to help. It will have that. But here's the other thing. Even if you have not experienced this type of loss, but perhaps you've dealt with other losses, it also has principles that you can use for dealing with any type of loss, any type of grieving. So I am happy to have you all be the first to see the next book. Thank you. Now, one more surprise for you all before I open it up for any questions or comments. As Dr. Reed mentioned, July I launched a new side to my business, which is the Business Crossing Network. And we will be having our 1-year anniversary. Yes, July 1st. And we are celebrating with our first annual conference, August 21st. Yes, that's right. So as you see, Dr. Oliver Reed will be in the building. We have workshops. We got Stacy's going to be in the building. Ken's going to be in the building. It's probably somebody else going to be in the building. I am offering 3 free tickets to the crowd today up until lunchtime. I am offering 3 tickets. It's going to be in Herndon, Virginia, again, August 21st. And just as a way to show my appreciation and support to Dr. Reed and the honor it has been to come and speak to you all. So are there any questions for me?
When you're going to your event, can you explain a little bit about what that consists of?
Sure, yes. So we're going to be in Herndon, Virginia. And as I mentioned, it's going to be speakers that are going to, talk about being. And absolutely, yes.
So my question is, how do we get the free ticket?
The free ticket? So after this, come see me. It's the first 3 people that come and see me. I will get you. Okay, the first 2 people. Okay, so. Yes, let's go. All right, so yes, I will get your information so that I can give you that. And since it's Dr. Reed, I might be able to give a ticket or 2 here extra than that, okay? All right, so with that said, are there any other questions or thoughts? Well, again, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
So, we're just as much writers as we are readers. So my question to you is, who are your favorite authors that just really touch your mind, your heart, that you just, I gotta read these books.
Wow. You know what? There are so many. So y'all gonna think I'm plugging Ken. This was not planned. But I will say, so Ken is actually one of my mentors. And was in my first book, I actually list that he was one of the people who actually told me, you have a book in you. And so again, the power of words, right? Because at the time I was like, book. But again, the power of words. And it was actually Ken's first book that, yes, he has it right there, that actually really inspired me. And again, I've read many books, so it's actually very hard to pick. But I will say that book actually put me in the mindset of being able to use my experience to heal others. So, and that, no, it's not, he's not getting paid, it's not. But that is one of the books that really put me on my path. Thank you.
Just to jump in, Dr. Oliver was my writing coach.
See how it works? See how it works? Yes.
I don't know if this is a larger question, but I think I have a very similar story in that I found myself suicidal in 2017, which is where my healing began, of course. But my book isn't so much a legacy for my family to be proud of, but an expose, let's say, of the dysfunction and trauma that existed that made me vulnerable to that in the first place. So I think part of what's held me back from telling my stories, it doesn't bring me any joy to hurt my family, but I also can't tell my story without being honest.
Yeah. And I love that because, I had to experience that as well in really all of my books, really talk about, being empowered and getting through some of these things. And I think my advice really is, first of all, you have to be true to your story. It's your healing. I talk about it all the time in my coaching programs. For me, what took so long probably for, getting through depression the first go round was because I kept trying to explain to people why I was depressed. I kept feeling like I had to answer and explain and make it okay and tiptoe and no, it wasn't really you. I remember one time my mom, was like yelling like, were you in that domestic violence situation because of me? How do you even answer that, right? Well, yes, probably so, but, right? But so I think my biggest advice is you do have to make a decision on how much you share. You never want to take away someone else's dignity. However, you do have to be true to your experience, your story. And again, through writing coaches and other mentors, you can kind of figure out that balance. But you have to share your story. And here's the thing. The people who made wrong decisions that impacted you, They made those decisions and they didn't really care how it would impact you. So you have to do what you have to do to heal yourself, and then potentially heal others. You're welcome.
One of the things that I learned as I grew older, and I wanted to tell my story, but I was always a great storyteller, I put it into fictional characters. So everything that happened to me happens with like 5 characters in my books.
Love it.
So my family couldn't look and say, well, why are you telling our business?
Yes.
So that would be another way of
Absolutely.
visualizing what happened to you. And it heals. It heals. It really
Yeah.
does.
Excellent. Yeah.
I wanted to say that's amazing that you brought out that book about losing a child. So I never thought about doing, I never really spoken about it until now. So October 10th, 2010, I lost a baby. Sorry. I didn't know how traumatic it was until now.
Yep.
You brought it up, but I have 5 sons. I thank God for my 5 sons. But just, you gave me a thought, you gave me an idea about losing that child, because I wanted her, I wanted her to be called Esperanza, which means hope. But when I lost a child, I lost the hope for a girl that had 5 sons. So I thank you for that, because that opened my mind, my heart, to the possibility of writing about losing a child.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I am very sorry for your loss. And that's one thing, the few times I did talk about this on social media, the amount of women that came forth, people that I've been friends with for years and never even knew, and they shared their experience and they thanked me for even just acknowledging it. So hugs to you. It is definitely a different experience that a lot of people that have gone through it, the experience can vary from person to person. So I look forward to reading your book about it. All right, I think I saw, yes.
Yes, my question is, so you went through depression, you went through these various traumas, but when you got to the point of getting ready to write, how did you prepare yourself mentally to get in a place where you were even able to write through some things that were still hurting? Because I'm thinking, when we're writing from a place of healing and a place of being unhealed. So how did you get to that place?
Yeah.
Mentally, how did you prepare yourself?
I love that question. And there's people who would probably answer differently. If you know me, you know that I'm very much a feelings person, and I just kind of go with it. Sometimes a little too much. I just it's going to work out. For me, the writing took on its own life. So there wasn't really a preparation process. As I said, my first book was watching my grandmother, and I just had to write about it. As I began to write, for me, it was going hand in hand with my own therapy, my own healing, and then that became the biggest part of the therapy and the healing and the journey. So for me, I would just encourage you to just start writing. And I believe Dr. Oliver T. Reed even talks about that. Sometimes just start the writing. Let it do what it's going to do. Once you start, remember that math problem. So once you get it out of your head and you actually start writing it out, it's going to do what it's going to do. Earlier, I know that I was talking with the young lady in the back, and we were talking about just putting yourself in a position to be used by God. Even speaking today, right? We can plan and prepare and do all that, but if we just leave ourselves open to let what's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I encourage, don't get too caught up in preparing. Now, some people are different. Some people got to light the candles and the music got to be right. I'm not that. I'll go right to my car right now on my phone, just start writing something and later come back to it. But choose what works for you. But don't get lost in feeling like you just have to be super prepared. Just write. All right. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Oliver.
Come on, give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up. Wow. You know what? That's powerful. How many of you learned something out of that? Listen, I'm gonna ask y'all to do the math from $400 and something to $8,000 by sharing your story. Listen, look at somebody and say, you got content.